I don't know how we got there. This
is the Fun Around Podcast, coming live from the FingerLinks1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to episode number 27 of the Fun Around Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you from the North Park building here at Academy Square at the headquarters of FingerLinks1.tv. We got a full house tonight, welcoming a couple of familiar faces to the studio who've finally got the first chance to see it in its most recent form. Dan DeLaney coming back, getting ready to restock all the paint reserves for 2018, getting ready to do a ton of different projects that unfortunately he can't tell us anything about. And then Jason Oldfield, of course, making his long-awaited return to the studio. He was very surprised to see that decked out in full holiday regalia all around him. But so we're going to be talking a little bit about all sorts of different topics through the course of this evening. We were just reminiscing and patting ourselves on the back that we have successfully clicked off 1 year. It's been a month and a half since it's been 1 year, but sure enough, we've got 27 episodes in now, and in our initial plan schedule, we should have had 26 in the course of 52 weeks, and we were able to hit 24 or 25 in that time frame. So apparently we did something right, and there's 171 people that have clicked the like button on Facebook, which is always cool, and our Canadian fan base continues to grow little by little. So I'm optimistic for where things are at and where things are going for next year, because there's a ton of stuff that there's a ton of stuff that we need to talk about after the show's over with anyway.
Oh boy, nothing like surprising me. I guess. I guess it's funny because the like thing is something that we've never really talked about. I've never really encouraged. We've never really encouraged anybody on the show that's watching the show to click the like button. But it certainly would be nice for them to do that. Just gives us a little bit of feedback that hey, you know what, we know you're enjoying what we're doing here, and you want to see us continue. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully...
My mom made 3 different Facebook accounts just so that she could like it more.
It's a great concept.
But, I will say the new studio is super nice. Really enjoying that.
I like the couch.
You missed the couch.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get the couch back. Oh, wow, look at that.
Look at
we got a nice overview.
Yeah,
camera.
Enjoy that while you can. That camera's going to freeze up here in a minute.
Oh, okay. Well, it's pretty nice. I like the Christmas stuff behind me. So we're gonna get during Halloween, I can have scary stuff behind me. And
it's not like your SpongeBob that you drew on your chalkboard.
That's right. Yeah, it's not. What was that? Episode 24 or something?
I think it might have been.
Right.
SpongeBob on your shoulder. Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice. Glad to be back. And
wait till you see what's behind you on National Support Working Single Mothers Month.
Oh boy. I would say, when is... I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to say something. I'm not even going to go there.
So is there anything that you actually can tell us about that you're working on?
Well, the season pretty much just ended, so all the new sponsorships are pretty much are in line. We've been contacted by some racers that, unfortunately, because nothing's out there yet, I can't disclose that. I'm sure you understand, but It's all good. It's good for the sport. It's good for the owner-driver, the teams. It's good for, obviously, my business. This is what we've done for 43 years, so I'm still happy to be getting the phone calls.
Right.
So, and the trade has changed, obviously, but we still get the calls. We're still involved, and every day I put the key in the door, so it's a good thing.
The corporate side of things, do you see any type of slowdown this time of year?
No, my corporate stuff's always good. And that's the stuff nobody really sees because I won't say it's boring. It's what I do for a living. But when you come in the shop, it's primarily race car orientated. But we'll do fleets of trucks for local and out of town businesses, and we install for major companies and do a lot of work in the Buffalo area. We'll go as far as the state line and come up to Rochester and thereabouts, for our commercial work. Mm-hmm. There's not too much we can't do.
Sure.
So we do illustrations and all kinds of things. Pull permits, install. We build in house. There's some of the larger stuff I farm out, but most shops do that too. So
right.
But like I said, every day doors open. So dog holds down the fort when I'm not there, and everything's good.
You guys were riffing back and forth about T-shirt artwork. You're sporting your
well, yeah, you can have a shirt and tie on. There's always a racing T-shirt on somebody's corporate, black tie affair. But artwork comes in many shapes and forms. Like anything, there's good restaurants, bad restaurants. There's some that people like that you don't, and there's some that vice versa. Same with artwork. Some people like my style, some like someone else's. It's personal. Mm-hmm. So, I had a gentleman years ago call me, and it was something I didn't do, but he wanted my input on it. He had a quote from an artist to do a rendering for $800. He had a quote from an artist to do a rendering for $900, and a quote to do one for $1,000. And they were all very reputable, motorsports artists to do paint schemes and that. And he said, "Geez, I like this guy's, but he's $1,000." So, well, that's the one you take because that's the guy you like. $200 when you're buying, sets of carburetors for $4 or $5 grand.
Right.
And if they don't run, you take them off, put another set on. So, you live with what you've purchased and painted your car to look like. So
right.
It's a little hard to scrub it off at the racetrack because you don't like it. But you can change parts out. So it's all personal preference. And again, it's just a rendering. Then you got to find the painter and the sign painter to make it look like it did.
Sure.
From the $1,000 rendering that you paid for,
now,
which is relatively inexpensive.
Right. Now, prior to the show going on air, we were talking about Tom Hoover's Showtime Corvette. Mm-hmm. So, who was it that did that?
The Corvette that really got all the ink when he first hit big time, like '76. Youngblood had designed it. It was a Jamie Sardi chassis and body on that car. I think it was an Odyssey. I can't remember, but that was probably painted. Out of Carter's or at
Circus.
No, I don't think Circus did that. I could be wrong, but I don't believe so. Or it could have been any of those. But Youngblood was heavily involved in that. And then the T-shirt art was Kenny Youngblood's.
Okay.
And it was, to this day, it's still pretty rich.
Yeah. And, we were talking about the modern versions of those T-shirts.
You were talking about one that you got.
Oh, yeah, the first one.
You got it through the fence in Indy.
Yeah, I was like 18, 19 years old. I bought one from Hoover at Indy in '76 when the car was there. And $4.95. He put it through the fence to me, and I let him keep the nickel. And the artwork was Kenny Youngblood's, and I still have the T-shirt. Fortunately, it shrunk very bad.
Very small. I'm sure.
Very small. But the artwork was so simple, it was over the top because it's not all this flash and glitter and that. It's just perfect. And it still would hold true today. You don't need a lot of flash to make things look good. Mm-hmm. It just needs to be right. And a lot of guys in all kinds of trades doing artwork and signage and that sometimes do overkill because they think they're giving the customer, their money's worth. Sometimes the old saying is simpler is better.
You got the tools, you got to use them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you don't.
You don't need to fill space. Negative space is good. And simplicity is good. Got to be able to read it.
Right.
And a lot of stuff you can't read.
Yeah, Dan and I actually earlier this week we were just talking about a job that he was working on. And we were talking about just that, and that how he was sitting down, basically putting this thing together. He was like, "Man, where do I stop?" Right? He goes, "I kind of want to add more and more to this thing, but at the same point in time, I'm just concerned that I'm going to make it too busy, and at that point in time, really start detracting from it." And it's like, oh, it's kind of cool to have something. You have lots of details in it, but you don't want to make it so busy that people are looking at it and thinking to themselves, "What the heck's going on?"
Right. Negative space is good. The concept behind what you do has to tell a story without having to tell it. And sometimes when you get to a point that you worked on something for 30, 40 hours, you second guess what you've done.
Right.
You shouldn't, but you do only because you want it to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And there is no such thing as perfect. But when it's for a client or it's for a paid commission work that you have free reign in, you don't want to overkill it, but you want to make your point, But again, simpler is better,
So when do you? I guess
when you
call
get
it
tired.
quits? I mean,
when you get tired, you walk away from it.
I mean, honestly, the two of you guys know a heck of a lot more about this than I do. I'm the least artistic guy sitting in this room by far. I mean, Chris is doing layouts for RC bodies all the time.
He was just telling me he did 4 of them yesterday.
And I've sat there and I've watched him do them in his kitchen at the table, right? And I've certainly watched you do tons of things. And it's like, at what point in time do you say, yeah, you know what? Well, that's enough. I'm not going to do anymore.
Again, when it starts to look cluttered is when you stop. Like I said, some guys do overkill because they want to show people, hey, I can do this. Well, sometimes a simple white letter is all you need to do, you know. The computer has helped and hindered that because guys get comfortable using it. You know, I'm guilty of that as well for different things. But when it comes to the race cars, and I think you know, myself and a few others around here have done them long enough that we know when to stop. You know, don't overkill somebody's logo or their name on the door. We're familiar with the tracks they race at. You know, other than the Fletchers and guys like that run national, that, you know, the big Peak logo that's pretty much dictated to us how it's got to look in that.
Right.
But that's corporate, and that's been well thought out before it even gets to our hands. It's just up to us to make it look like it belongs on the car.
So I'm curious now, and this is actually, I guess, even a question for you too, Chris, is that, you know...
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. Again, I mean, I don't do this at all. It's like, what's the most amount of time that you've spent on a single race car?
Well, it's hard to say because they're all different. The longest that I've really had thought into one in that is probably the restoration I did this past January in Dick Carroll's car, which is owned by Bill Porterfield. That's the original 70.5 Camaro funny car out of Michigan. Not that it took me this long.
So that wasn't a tribute car. That was the original
That's the
car.
original body.
Okay.
The chassis is a direct copy of the car that he had. So yeah, it's all original parts and everything else. That car there, because the reference material was not extremely good on it, even though he had good photographs and that of it. A lot of placement issues. You had to almost not second guess the guys that lettered it, but you had to go back in time and realize, you know, this was 71 or 70 and a half when these guys lettered it. So, you know, you had to go back and pull the techniques out that these guys would have been using. And that, I think, most of the time I spent on that was sitting there thinking about it, thinking about the size and the placement and picking reference points, you know, along, because Porterfield's an engineer, former engineer with Oldsmobiles. You know, he'd micrometer everything.
Right.
You know, so, you know, kidding, of course, but it had to look like it had to look. And, you know, where I would see a shadow, he never saw it. So a lot of it was sitting on a milk crate, staring at it and staring at pictures until I actually laid a brush on it. So the car was actually in my shop for 3 weeks, but that's also because he lived in Michigan. They left it with me. But I did spend a lot of time sitting looking at it and looking at different logos. But everything on that car is hand lettered. All decals, everything.
How different were the techniques then versus now?
Well, I mean, it's not actually the technique. I mean, sign painting. It's just the styles they used, placement. You know, if I was to letter that car now, it wouldn't look anything like it did. But you go back, and that's how the cars were lettered in the 70s. Variegated gold leaf, and they would airbrush all the edges and, you know, shadow it to the right instead of the left. And the left side looked different than the right because of the way the body was, and gold leaf stripes. And, you know, these guys probably only got $500, you know, and split it to do this thing back then, which was an exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah.
You know, I won't tell you what I charged them, but... You know, a lot of that, though, is being able to do it and making it look like it was time period correct. So a lot of these guys with tribute cars or original cars, they falter when it comes to paint and lettering. And that's the first thing people see when they push them out of the trailer.
Right.
And here you know, I saw a guy redo one of Kenny Bernstein's arrows. It was horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and I'm not knocking the guy. It was absolutely horrendous. And I thought to myself, with all the reference material, especially of those cars, you know, Harold's car, it was 40-some years old. Not a lot of reference material, or good reference material, black and white photos, things like that, you know, excuse me. But here's Bernstein's, you know, 78 or 80 Aero. Budweiser down the side, there's millions of colored pictures of that.
Right.
And they did it in vinyl. Car wasn't lettered in vinyl. John Pugh lettered that car. Glenn lettered a couple of those cars. It was embarrassing.
Wow.
And they're trying to pass it off. And again, I'm not knocking the guy. He's got one and I don't. But, you know, if you get to that point, you know, if you spend all your money, you run out of money when it comes, I won't say the most important part, but like I said, the first thing people look at is when you push it out of the box, and unfortunately, I'm too critical, So, but
well, that's the profession that you're in, right?
I mean, the sad part is, in my profession, and some of the other guys around here, Brian Brisky, Justin O'Brien, they'll tell you the same thing. We not only do our work for the client, which we're thrilled to do with, but we do it for each other. Where Brian would look at something I did, and I'm more worried about him critiquing me than I am the client, because it's a professional thing. Yet we hold high regards for each other. Same with Justin. Justin's a young up-and-coming kid, and he's very talented, and he looks up, I guess, to us older guys.
Old guys.
Yeah, I fit in that category. But, in the same thing, we want the trade to continue, like with, Tukey Hess. My God, here's a kid that's just phenomenal, over-the-top talent. And yet he'll still stand next to me and say, what do you think? And that's an honor to me to have him ask me that, because you don't know where you are in your trade.
Now, is that Bucky's kid?
Bucky has his kid, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is he doing that? Is he doing that for a living?
Yeah, he works with his dad. They own a high-end collision shop.
Okay.
That's what Bucky's always done.
Yeah. Well, I knew they had a collision shop, but I didn't realize that.
He does all those wacky paint jobs.
Right.
All the
which, when you
stuff.
look at them from a detail standpoint, they're unbelievable.
Ungodly. When Bucky crashed the '68 Hemi at Indy last year, stuffed the nose into the wall. This year they had it there, and you can't tell.
Yeah.
How Tukey blended all that and repainted it. It's insane. Absolutely insane. A God-given talent way beyond what God probably figured he had, But he's a great kid, the paint trade, that he'll take from his dad. And, he taught himself how to letter. Trades in good hands.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm happy to call him a great friend. His dad as well. I've known his dad a long time too from racing. But and again, same thing. And I'm sure Brian Brisky will tell you the same thing. With Justin doing his thing up here, our trade's in good hands. I don't think Justin hand letters as much as he probably want to or has the ability to, but knows how to run a sign shop, and he's pretty good at his illustrations and picking up a spray gun. So
yeah, I don't think
I like him a lot. I wish he'd come and work for me. Take my business over. There you go. Hope you're listening.
In today's day and age, right? No young artist in this industry, unfortunately, is going to get an opportunity to letter or hand paint as much as they.
Yeah, well,
want,
you have to have the desire, of course.
You say no young artist in this time period is going to have the opportunity to do that or another thing. If they want to, they can, right?
It's all desire in that. Of course, your market. If your market doesn't bear it, then you're doing it for yourself.
Square peg, round hole. That.
Right. I just did a project over the holiday here that I haven't done in 35 years. And it came back to me 2 seconds after I started working on it, and I got so much enjoyment out of creating this thing. But again, in today's computer world, nobody was sat down and done with, and I can't disclose what it is, but.
Are these all the same project, or are these all the different projects?
These are different projects.
These are all different projects. Yeah. I don't want your life.
Pardon me?
I don't want your life. There's too many secrets.
Oh, no, it's a blast. Then I take the dog for a walk and bring him back in, and I start something else. But, yeah, no, the shop's a shop. Some projects take an hour. Others take 40 hours. Some take, 6 months of negotiations with clients to put signs on their buildings, and, it's got to go through a review committee, and that's the part of the business that it becomes a business, where a lot of guys think, sign painters have an El Camino with a sign kit in the back, and
you don't?
No, I don't have the El Camino, which I wish I did. But a lot of guys have big shops like I do. I built my shop for a purpose, and the purpose was to really not only help myself, but to accommodate my clientele.
But to show off all your models too.
Oh yeah, my models are there. They're there. And
you said sign painting is sign painting. That what was happening in 1970 and a half when they were working on that car, and what you're happening now. You're still putting.
Yeah, it's still it's still one shot lettering enamel. It's still number 12 quills and, and striping brushes and gold leaf and variegated leaf and the techniques of that. But the letter styles have changed and the thought process of how things are lettered. I look at stuff I lettered 10 years ago and go, holy cow, I lettered that? Not in disbelief, but I don't use those styles anymore or that tightness or just those colors. I mean, late 80s, early 90s, there was turquoise and pink flying off the shelf in every shop in the world, and now you wouldn't be caught dead with it on a car. But that changes as time
Heartbeat
changes.
of America, baby.
Oh my God, your dad loved that. He'd come in my shop, and if there was a Chevy in there, he'd walk over to it and because is that way that goes right there? Heartbeat of America. Oh, he hated that saying. I must have lettered that thing
a million
times on every hood scoop, shape, and size in the world. It was great marketing by Chevrolet.
Yeah, kudos to them for coming up with that. Right?
Well, I hated lettering it though because they had me put in some funky places.
But in terms of sign painting being sign painting, and like you said with the placements and the font styles and the color combinations and stuff, is that art to over dramatize it? Is that art going to be lost?
It is lost
eventually because the people now that are getting into it, while they could have every desire on the planet to go through and learn how to airbrush and learn how to do all the fine pinstriping, they aren't going to have the connection with the history that you guys have.
The history of it, again, what's happened was when the computer came in and made everybody good sign painters better, and guys that were working at Chevy and got laid off, they either became landscapers or bought a sign machine, and that we were buying their products, their old equipment 6 months later because they only got 2 days of training. But what happens is when you go to letter a nostalgia car, even if it's not a retro car, then somebody's saying an old gasser and the guy wants his name on it, you got to make it look like that era.
Right.
You don't use 2017 lettering on it, or it's not going to look like that. So luckily, I've been blessed with a wealth of useless knowledge of what I enjoy. And I can go back and letter them like Jim Prohaska or Mac or one of those guys did back in the late 60s, early 70s at Niagara and that. And even your Uncle Dick's car, you look at it today and you never see that roll through the staging lanes looking like that.
I hope not.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, especially with all the cowboy hats on it. But the people have gotten computer lazy too, where they'll pick a font and just use that, even if it's a mask, and they paint it in and do some airbrush and that. You have to have the passion to do what you do, and you can see that with the guys that are out there that are talented. I use that as well. It's a tool for the trade, but you can get in a mode where you just go to the computer and find a font and just extend it or whatever, and have at it. Even though you can colorize it and airbrush or use it in vinyl or digitally print it, the talented guys will find a way to make it look real. But,
how often do you get in a situation where you're given a clean slate and just say, I want this to sort of have these colors and just go?
That's a catch-22. Most of the times, a guy will come in and say, I don't know what I want other than my name on the door. And, I'll thumbnail something up when he's standing there and he goes, just do what you want. And then, if they have a budget, they tell you, hey, I got, $500 to spend or $1,000 or, carte blanche, knock yourself out, But you give them what they can afford, and then maybe a little extra just because it's not enough. And, your name's on this stuff too, but you can't give the house away. You're in business. So most of the time you talk about it. And again, a case like, Fletcher, Danny Fletcher with all the peak stuff, that's pretty much dictated to, we need it here, 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 and here. Okay, well, you have some liberties, and of course, Dan's involved with, how big it has to be because of other, sponsors on the car, et cetera, et cetera. And, those cars were all well thought out before we even did anything.
Right.
But most of the time, like even with Jason, here you go, call me when it's done. I need this on it, I need that on it. Logos from the local speed shops, or, if it's a store, or, say Wegmans sponsor something, well, obviously it's got to look like the Wegmans logo. That's when it becomes corporate. But Jansen or some of the other speed shops around, it's got to look like that. You can use the colors because most cars aren't geared towards individual speed shop colors and that. So.
Yeah, I mean, my car was probably fairly simple as an example, just because of the fact that it's all plain red, right? So no stripes, nothing else on it. It's like, here you go, here's a blank canvas. All you got to do is pick something that looks good with red, and from there, knock yourself out.
But you fight body lines, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the second part of that question is, how often do you find yourself fighting, so to say, with the buyer? They want to busy it up beyond the point, and then after you go through and you do all those fixes, like if you would have just let me do this right the first time.
He never has any sort of arguments with the client, and he never has any sort of arguments with the current layout of the paint scheme and what he needs to put on it. It's all perfect.
Out of the park every time.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Congratulations. We'll talk on the way home.
He calls me probably once a week. Oh my God! You gotta believe, won't believe what I had to try to. Yeah. Again, you talk about the square peg in the round hole, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I mean that's typical with anything. I mean we're asked to even build signs that shouldn't go where they go, and the corporate president of the company wants this, and by the time we're done, we're back to dealing with somebody who understands. Simpler is better, and you don't need the charging buffalo behind your logo to make it look like it belongs on your wall. It's too busy. We do get that with clientele. Sometimes we do fight the body style of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Or unfortunately, if we haven't had a hand in the paint design, or someone who's professional hasn't designed it and understand where things have to go, and it's not well thought out, and the colors are horrendous. Yeah, it's a challenge, but
it's not only the color, right? But it's the actual paint scheme itself. I mean, there are plenty of paint schemes that look really cool, standing by themselves, and then all right, now I need to put some lettering on it. All right, where am I going to put this?
There's a couple guys out there doing paint schemes that are very well done, but there's no lettering on the cars.
Yeah,
and I'm like, race cars, you got to letter them. Just putting your name on the collar on the window. Just now all you're doing is driving around with a piece of artwork on the side of your car that looks like a bunch of swirls and skulls and barbed wire. And I'm not knocking the guys that do them. God, the quality is incredible. But race cars get names and sponsors put on them, and you need to leave that space to do that. Mm-hmm. And when you see a car in a paint booth that's been well thought out, and you see that paint scheme go on that car, there's a ton of blank space, even though there's colors there. Mm-hmm. And he's like, God, that looks horrible. But wait till you see it done when it rolls out of either my shop or someone else's, and the lettering's placed where it's supposed to be. Right. It all falls into place. Great sign painter in North Tonawanda, Jim Prohaska, probably a mentor. I looked up to him when I was growing up. He told me years ago, you get paid for knowing what colors to use, what size lettering to use, the font. That's what it's called. Most of our fonts are bastard fonts. We make them up,
right?
Unless they're corporate. That's where the bastard font is. That's
Can we say that?
Yeah.
That's my take on.
We can say whatever the.
This show will end fast, but he was right. Because we talk about business, and we talk about what you are worth and what our pay scale is worth for what we produce in that. And he said that's, he made a lot of sense. That's what you get paid for. You don't get paid to do a garbage job. You're being paid because you know how to do it. No different than going to a concert that you paid $180 for a ticket for. That's because the Eagles have been playing 50 years, and to listen to 20 songs of theirs is worth $150 to sit in the cheap seats.
To some.
Yeah, well, not to you. I don't even know half the bands you listen to. I dragged them to a Tower of Power concert when he goes, oh my God, are you kidding me? Funny thing is, Mike Paz was sitting behind us.
Right.
But that's where that comes from. I mean, the professionalism behind it. It is a trade when it comes to the race cars that, we try to put out a professional looking product. To finish, even if a paint job comes to us, the guy did it himself, God love him, trying to save a couple bucks, and maybe it's not the best thing. you go at it. You give him what he's paying you to do. And 9 times out of 10, you can make it even look that much better. Just because, of what you're doing on it. You can take maybe the flaws of what that paint scheme is and dress it up just by where you place things or the style that you use. Some guys say, I've got this much to work with. Well, I'd rather have them tell me that than be surprised when they walk in the door. Because, I'll be honest with you, it's not inexpensive to letter a race car. You can find guys that cut you vinyl and stick it on there for a couple $100, but then go roll it up next to something that comes out of a little higher end shop. It doesn't look anything like it. But the guy saved a ton of money, but now he's stuck with it for however long till he takes the heat gun to it.
Right. Well, and some people, they look at
maybe it's a budget. Yeah,
they look at it different ways,
different.
right? I know Billy Lieber and I have talked about this, where Billy, not that he doesn't like his things to look nice, he does, but
he tells me he has no pride or he'd hire me more. That's what he's told. I have no pride in my stuff, or I'd have my stuff at your shop all the time. That's what he always told me.
Well, and I will say that's the one thing with Billy overall is that he considers his race cars tools first and foremost, right? And there are guys out there that's really the thing with them, is that it's a tool.
And I get that. I understand. Yeah, absolutely.
I've come across that a couple times where they just do not care what it looks like.
Right.
Doesn't care.
Doesn't make you go faster.
Nope.
And I hear that all the time. It's your prerogative. And then I've had the calls where guys call me up and say, "Do you want to letter my race car?" And I'm like, "Do you want me to letter your race car?" I mean, sure, I want to letter them all. I'd be at the shop
that's a
today
loaded
if somebody
question.
wanted me
When
to.
somebody says, "Hey, would you want to letter my race car?" It's like I'm not sponsoring you. Paint scheme. No, I know what that is. That wolf is.
You've had that proposed.
That wolf is very clearly.
I've had that proposed to me all the time. Usually by people that either don't know me or.
Would you like the privilege?
Oh yeah. No, that was your dad. That was your dad. Your dad.
I'm gonna help you get your name out there.
Right.
I'm going places.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. I'll tell everybody you did it. Put it big on the side. Yeah, no thanks.
Nah, I pass.
But you pay your dues. I mean, I paid my dues. Everybody else, in no matter what business, has paid their dues. You pay your dues when you go racing.
Oh, yeah.
I remember my first trailer. God, we were welding on it every Saturday morning after driving to Lancaster. And then I stepped up to another trailer, and then I bought an enclosed trailer and a bigger enclosed trailer, and got smart and quit. So,
but your first enclosed trailer
was a Braco.
Was it short?
No, well, it was only as wide as the car because the tires and the axles were on the outside of the body.
Oh, okay.
And it was probably 18 feet, maybe 16.
Okay, all right, yeah.
And it had ramps, not a door that went down.
I recollect that you kind of had a smaller.
But that's at the time it was enclosed, and it was cool.
Right.
Had lights on the outside for working on it, and it kept my stuff inside locked up.
Yeah, my recollection of your first trailer was that it was basically big enough to fit the Roadster in it.
Yeah, and a little more. Yeah, couldn't stand up in it.
Oh, so it was a short.
I can't stand up in a 6-foot trailer.
Right.
But and at the time they were somewhat popular trailers. I bought it from Gal. Oh God, I can't think of his name now. I think he's deceased, but down in Bliss, New York. Gal Barber in Bliss, New York.
Oh.
He was selling that line of trailer, Braco. Jim Salemi had one. Bob Guida had one. I believe the Schmidt brothers ended up with one. John Torelli.
John
Jacala, I think.
I remember Torelli's. I remember Torelli's trailers.
Corvette. And they were great trailers. I mean, I probably paid $3,000 for it back in 1983.
Right.
My God, it might as well have been $30,000.
Right.
But it was an enclosed trailer, and it got you where you're going and protected your stuff. Especially with the Roadster, there's no doors and windows on it.
So when you got into the Roadster, so before the Roadster you had the Camaro, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know what the Camaro is now?
I sold it to a kid that was a bartender at Cassidy's on Main and Amherst, and he put it on the street and left all the lettering and the paint and everything on it and parking on the sidewalk. So
oh, really?
That was 1979, 80, I think. Yeah.
And that was the last you knew of it?
Yep.
All right, so when you went to the Roadster, did you go to an enclosed trailer right when you went to the Roadster?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I even had the enclosed trailer just to haul it around to get the body work done.
Yeah.
And luckily my shop was in the same shop as Jeff Hoyt, who originally started the race car, and then that became Jim Slemmy's G-Force race cars. And I was in that building until 1990 when I built the facility I'm in now. And Jimmy's expanded immensely down there. So, yeah, it's kind of a neat story. You know, we talk about doing little jobs during the day, and here we are plugging away like we both are now. So.
Yeah, and you know, for those that don't know, including Chris, Jeff Hoyt built Phil Harnden's car too.
That's correct. So, and then Jeff went on. Jeff left Buffalo and went on to work for Jack Roush for I think close to 25 years. He's retired now.
Oh, is he retired?
Yeah, I think maybe a year or two ago. Yeah, I think he retired.
I thought he actually was still working there.
Yeah, no, I remember when he went there. Jeff's a neat kid. A kid who's older than me. He had said, you know, he got hired, and the first day, you know, they walk him around, they show him around the shop, and oh, this is cool, you know, working for Roush and what have you. And
I was working for Roush in Michigan, right?
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Said then the next day, you're just a number. you're welding stuff and that, you know. You never get to see Jack, and you know. Right. But Jeff ended up running the shop, unbelievable fabricator, and of course, you know, Jimmy took over that shop with stuff that Jeff had started, and they're still great friends. Jim Slemmy can weld, you know, $2 bills together. That's how, you know, that's how good he is. You know, there's this area is very talented, very, very full of talented people. You know, chassis, engine builders, painters, sign painter, plural. Sorry, but you know,
you're not included.
I'm in there somewhere, but yeah, it's we're pretty lucky for only racing 5 to 6 months out of the year. People don't realize how lucky we are in this area, and myself included, because obviously I draw off of that. You know, and the tracks, you know, the tracks have come full circle. I mean, I used to go to Lancaster at 10 years old on Thursday nights. You know, watching your Uncle Dick race the Missile at times. You know, but you know, Lancaster's had a resurgence. Obviously, Empire's, you know, on its way. What Jerry's doing up there is incredible. You know, unfortunately, the spectator draw isn't there. You know, unless there's a big booked-in show or Street Outlaws or, you know.
I think you might see that change now, and not. I mean, unfortunately, from a geographical standpoint, I don't think you're ever going to see it draw the kind of people that you would at Lancaster, because you're not necessarily talking about people going from a metropolis to 10 minutes away or 15 minutes away.
Yeah, Lancaster's 20 minutes from everything.
Right.
You know, and I mean, and plus the dual. You know, they run a facility almost 5 nights a week out there, which is great. I mean, you own a piece of property with a racetrack on it, basically two racetracks on it. You know, you only used to be open Thursday nights and Saturday nights for, you know, 5 months minus rain dates. And, you know, I'm just a tidbit of information. In its heyday, when Genesee Beer was on tap there, that was Genesee Beer's second largest account in every year. And it was open 2 nights a week. What's that tell you about the racers? You know, but, you know,
there's a lot of cream ale.
A lot of cream ale, and believe me, you know, well, we, you know, $2 at the beer tent after you win. You know, that was pretty special Friday nights or Saturdays. And I remember after Alex Friesen took over, there was no, you know, they closed the concession stands at 11 o'clock, and you know, if you're lucky enough to still be around at 11. You know, you wanted a pop, and maybe not a beer, and the girls who were with you, and they wanted a wine cooler or a pop. So we asked them, I said, you know, hey, can we get, you know, concessions to stay open? No, we can't do that. They want to go home. I said, okay, we get that. So what about a pop machine? He goes, oh, I can't do that. So what is that? He goes, because on Saturday night, they throw the cans at the stock car racers. So I'm like, okay, so you sold me, and we're all good. So, you know, of course that's changed, but you know, that's come along for full circle too. You know, they've got the Wednesday night deal, which packs them in. You know, packs them in.
Have you ever seen that, Chris, at Lancaster? They have a cruise night on Wednesday night, and it's free to get in, right? It's free to get in.
$5 a lap.
$5 a pass down the track.
Yeah, $5 a beer.
It is packed. Unbelievably packed.
Yeah. The line going out the gate was incredible.
Yeah,
I've been by there.
And they got a burnout contest and that, and you know that's. But those kids or young adults, they don't come on Fridays.
Right.
They don't come to the actual drag races, which I think they're missing out because, you know, or you know, just my 2 cents, maybe the track can lure them there by, you know, hey, you know, show us your ticket from Wednesday night or something and come on in on Friday, you know, $5 even, you know, but, you know, it's hard when you go somewhere where it's free to then start paying, but I think they'd be pleasantly surprised. It's a great show on a Friday night. And I mean, Empire, my God, it's great up there. The facility, God, you could play golf down the side of the track.
Right.
The lawn is perfectly done, So, I mean, Jerry's turned the place around. Now he's building a new concession stand. They dug up some of the track out there. The new tower, there's a couple flaws in that I can see just from a spectator point of view, from sitting in the grandstand and the people standing on the starting line. Maybe that needs to be looked at, but I'm sure he's got a laundry list a mile long of people telling him how to run the place, so he doesn't need my two cents of observance, but he'll get there, like anything else. Lancaster's been there for close to 60 years, if it hasn't been that long. Right. I've seen it go from a snow fence where you stood alongside there to what it is today, and it's great. And their stock car program is great.
I used to love that as a kid, getting slivers on it all the time. That was literally what they had separating the pits from the track was a snow fence.
Really?
Yeah. And you could stand right down and now they have a concrete wall and some chain link
fence. Yeah.
But you could literally, I got pictures of me staging my car with 40 people leaning over the concrete guardrail with money in their hands. Of course, they were betting against me. So, I didn't win anybody any money, but, well, maybe I did. But, obviously for security reasons and people getting injured and that had to change. But, you can't get any closer at a racetrack than you can at 57 Gunville. It's pretty neat. And the talent that comes out of there. The Mikey Genesis, the Freddie Hans, the Jimmy Addies, Jimmy Zakia still out there pounding away. The Fay brothers. God, these are, from the 60s. Still out there doing it. Jimmy Zakia out there, 75 years old, showing the kids how it's done. It's pretty neat when you think about it. Talk about a history lesson.
There was a couple things there that they were going over before we get into the history lesson part of that. The jumping off point for Empire Dragway. Congratulations to Patrick Budd on getting married.
That was this past week, I think.
Yep, that was this past week. Yes, and the date now out for Empire Dragway's banquet. It's going to be January the 20th.
I think it was the 20th.
Right.
Yeah. It's Mount Morris this year now.
Is it?
I think it's the same place that they've had it the last couple of years. It's a nice place. It's definitely a nice facility, and I mean we broadcast.
You doing it again?
I'm in for it as long as you are. I'm hoping that
we're gonna put some thought into the production side of it this time,
rather than just kind of show up and
free meal.
How are we going to do this?
Actually, we didn't.
No.
Because we didn't stop streaming. We didn't get a chance to. Dinner came and dinner went. No, I think we can put it together where it's a little bit more condensed instead of trying to shoot from across the room. I'd like to get a little bit closer and do a couple of different things with the champions and rotating people through along those lines. I think it'd be fun. We can. I think we'd probably jam everything through in an hour and a half or so, and pretty well cover everything that's happening.
Yeah, people need to see who the champions are, and this is a great way to.
I agree.
To bring them in front of them, and a lot of times I've been to half a dozen banquets already this off season because we're involved in a lot of racing series, and it's funny because as much as you're around these guys, half the time they got a fire suit on or a baseball cap and sunglasses and. Their wives, throw them in the tub and scrub them up, and you're standing next to them going, God, who is this guy?
Right. He looks familiar.
And their car's not behind them. But, it's a great way, one, to honor them. It's an accomplishment. It's tough enough to win on a regular Friday or Saturday or Sunday night out there. But to go the season and be your champion, that's... it should be applauded. And the track owners need to bring that to the attention and really honor these guys the way they should be. It's not all about just winning cash and all that. You need to be put on a pedestal for that year. It's quite an accomplishment. It's a lot of hard work that nobody sees, and that's not just at the track. And there's some guys that have the golden horseshoe, but there's other guys that work so hard and they get that breakthrough win, and that's like winning Indy. And then when they become the champion. Make it about them that night.
You're making me feel bad here.
Well, I didn't win no championship either, buddy. So.
Well, no.
Well, you did, though.
Go on.
I say you're making me feel bad because it's not only up to the track owners, but it's up to the promoters of the various series that are running as well to make sure that they are having banquets and honoring their champions. We're not mentioning any names here, but
I've been to one of your banquets.
Yes, exactly.
I got the free meal.
But unfortunately, we missed last year, and I haven't officially announced this yet. But
so don't.
What's that?
So don't.
So we don't want to.
Are you announcing that? Are you actually going to do it?
Well, are we officially announcing it? No, because I still have to
work
out the details with Jerry. But I hope that we're going to be honoring Harry Phelps at the Empire Banquet on January 20th.
And he's a two-time champion in your series.
Two-time champion.
Back to back.
Correct. Yep. I mean, last year...
And by honoring him, you mean that you're going to have a trophy and be in front of everybody. It's not like you're going to pull him aside in the parking lot and just say, hey, here's your trophy.
Last year we had a very nice plaque that Dan made up for us, like he has every single year. And so we had a plaque for him, and I gave him the check and all the rest of the prizes that went along with it.
That's the big part.
That was all presented to him on the side of the racetrack at our first event this year. And it definitely, he didn't get his due, honestly. And like I said, I felt bad about that last year that didn't take place, and I don't want that to happen 2 years in a row.
Yeah, circumstances prevented that, so it's I'm sure he understands, and now he gets a chance to do it again. So it's great for him that he'll get his justice. But the banquets that you have had and the ones I've attended have been great. Again, put them up front. Don't let these guys sit at a table back.
Right.
Have a table reserved for them up front. Even if you don't have a head table, at least the table up in front should be them. It's their night. A couple of the banquets I've been to, there has been a head table where they've made them sit up front.
Right.
And somebody said, oh, they won't sit there. Well, if you make them, they will. It's like a wedding. So, and it's really become nice. It's their night. Make it their night.
There is some onus on the drivers though too, because some of those guys don't like being in the spotlight. No, but they don't want to be split up from their family and stuff like that. Which I get that part.
Yeah, too. I get that.
I always hated that about weddings. Yeah, I did. I always hate the fact that if you're in the wedding party, it's like, all right, you got to go sit at the head table,
and then your spouse or
sitting at the table by themselves, right?
With the in-laws.
You're talking about not knowing who the drivers were, not being able to recognize anybody.
Exactly.
Did Jason tell you the story that he's run into with his newfound fame with Final Round? He's got people coming up to him like crazy. They're saying, "Wow, you're doing a great job," and he's like, "I don't know who any of these people are."
Yeah,
getting friend requests like crazy on Facebook. It's a tough life to adjust to.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's really pretty incredible from the show, the people that come up to me at the track when I'm racing, just to tell me, hey, I watched the podcast and really love it, and watch every single episode. It's super entertaining, and
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah, it is. I mean, of course, at the same point in time, I have guys on Facebook in the Empire group also telling me, you know what, we don't care what you think, and we don't want to hear your opinion, so...
Which those guys are tuning in just to yell at you.
Maybe.
First off. But second, I'm more entertained by the fact that it's become Kleenex. They don't refer to it by the name. It's just the podcast and everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, sure.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah,
we got the same thing with Crash Course.
It's like being called by your nickname or your last name. I'm over at Oldfields, or I'm over at DeLaney's.
Right.
You don't have to say anything. It just, same thing. It's actually respect when you think about it.
Yeah, certainly not looking to. I wasn't looking to come in here and basically, wax nostalgic about.
Well, we had to at some point. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait another year.
Is this the anniversary show?
I guess. But I've been pretty happy, certainly, with the way this show has turned out, and I certainly am hoping that we can continue to do this and get more guests from. Not only across the state, but really across the country. And I think for year one, we did pretty good. We had a bunch of people on. I think Ed McLeaf probably gets the long distance award coming from Pennsylvania. Shingle House, Pennsylvania. I think it was 3.5 hours or something for him to get here. But we certainly did plenty of phone interviews. We did the one podcast with me on Skype, and I think we can do more of that.
Yep. That worked out good. That I watched, from the comfort of my big chair, and you'd never know you weren't here.
Yeah.
And
we'll just need to buy a camera and ship it to all our guests so that everybody has a camera available.
They're calling you 5 minutes before. How does this thing work?
Right.
Escape what?
We've been there.
Yeah.
The 31st lap, we have definitely been there. It's like, yeah, we're going to Skype in.
Yeah,
okay, that's great. And then we this doesn't work.
The nice part about the show here is that it broadens what's going on out there. The people you've interviewed and talked to live in studio is one thing, but that you do have the ability to have a guy like Wally Clark, who I've known close to 50 years, be able to call in and go over what you guys asked him and give his insight to his 55 years of racing.
Right.
That's a history lesson in itself. He's Australian, then immigrated to Canada, and the racing career he's had, it's incredible. And there's some old school there. Yet at 71, he's still out there, dragging the bumper along with all the young kids. He finished number 2 in points in the Can-Am series. So
this year?
Yeah, Bob Park is still out there. He's the oldest of the Can-Am series drivers. F.J. Smith's daughter drives, but Fred's still involved. And you go to like the GRS series, and some of the guys are younger, and some are much older than I am, but they're out there racing. And maybe it's 8th mile. That's fine, but they're still dragging their stuff to the track and enjoying themselves and putting on a show. And it's still a sport. It's like pickup hockey when you're 40, slow puck hockey. You're still playing.
Right.
So there's a venue that you can go to, whether it be locally here or drag your stuff down to Ohio or Norwalk or Thompson or whatever. It's all great, and that creates market for, again, painters, engine builders, chassis guys, speed shops, sign painters.
How do you feel about the change to 8th mile?
I'm sorry?
How do you feel about the change to 8th mile?
I ran 8th mile all the time because we raced at Lancaster, and I loved racing at night. It did get dark once in a while when I was still in, but usually it was still pretty bright when my stuff was going in the trailer. But I think it's great. One, you got to be more than dead on racing 8th mile. Quarter mile you can make up a little, but in today's day and age, my God, everybody's 00 something. In my era of racing, and I haven't raced in 20 years. 20 light, you could probably turn the wind light on. And that was chopping the tree down. And when I started racing, it was 5 ambers.
Right.
It wasn't a 3 amber tree. I thought it'd stop red light.
I thought it was a flagman still when you were racing.
Yeah, pretty close.
There's a young lady with a kerchief and a flashlight.
Yeah. Well, that still goes on. But yeah, no, it's all great, and everything's a trickle down. Everybody needs a chassis guy or a welder. Everybody needs, again, a guy that even does Lexan windows and sign painter, and It's great for business. Look at Mikey Janis' business. Look at the old speed shop, Schmidt's Performance, K&S, and all that. Gordon, for God's sakes. This area was incredible with that kind of stuff. Speed and Custom, Speed Trends. The stuff up here at Mills Performance and
B&D.
Yeah, B&D, Billy, and those guys. I mean, it was a great era. I'm glad I lived it. I still live it. And I still enjoy having the hot rods in the shop, and the people that even just come in for other reasons that still don't even have race cars. It's become a little social business too. But the restoration stuff's really taken off. There's a lot of guys that are over 60 that still letter very well with Go Leaf and what have you, and the younger guys really, excuse me. There's some guys that do it, maybe not locally, but it's a dying art, and it's very sad, especially because I enjoy the trade so much. But you got to have the passion to do it. It's like playing the piano. You can sit down and somebody can teach you how to read music and play the piano and play chopsticks or Merry Christmas or whatever. But if you want to have the passion like Billy Joel does or whatever, you got to have it in you.
I'm assuming that with nostalgia racing, things like the Get Racing series, right? Mm-hmm. Them coming back, that you must have seen an uptick, let's call it, in business of
absolutely.
Hand-lettered cars, right?
That's where it comes from now.
Frank did we have Frank on
Frank Zimnick?
Did we have him on the show?
He was on when I think he was on when the Gasser guys, we had 3 or 4 Gasser guys came on.
He didn't come into the studio though. Was he on the phone when you
might
met,
have been.
or was he in the studio too? I can't remember. But regardless, I mean, his car's beautiful.
His green Austin. I mean, Dewey Dilcher painted it in its time period correct. Bill Stevens did some work on it. I believe John Trelli had a little bit to do on it. Don't quote me on all of those guys, but and of course Frank and his brothers were constantly on those cars. That's why they do. But all those guys do.
Yeah.
But the green tinted windows, the tuck and roll interiors, the gold leaf, the chopped tops, the period correct wheels. They're trying to make it look like it's supposed to. Of course, you can't make everything. The parts aren't there. But for the majority, I would say, we're blessed with even a series like that. On a good day, there'll be 35 guys out there with.
I think there's more than that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
I think
sure
there's 35
members.
just in the
I know
nostalgia gas or whatever they call it.
I think the one Gold Cup they had, Frank told me they had like over 70 some cars, and that's pulling a few out of Ohio and that. But yeah, to me that was my era. The first time I went to the Dregs, it was 1968, and it was Jimmy Otti's Austin, which I was privileged to letter that car for the current owner, and it's the original, Otti's Austin Gasser for Trouble John Cassio, and I didn't even need reference material. That's how much I remembered that car. But to have it sitting in my shop 40 years later, and it was the original car, it was a career move.
Right.
It's an exclamation point, top 10. Whether it's my favorite or not, I'll never go there. But and then after John Trelli,
my guess is that
my top 10.
If you were an artist, right? If you were Picasso, I suppose you.
Does your top 10 list have about 25 cars on it?
Right.
No, actually, I've been asked, what was your favorite car to letter, and I always tell people the next one, of course. But,
right.
In the scheme of things, you can't pick favorites. I was asked to take a page in a calendar, and with my advertising on it, and of course the calendar was all photos of race cars, and I said I can't. It would be professional suicide for me to put 5 pictures of race cars in there that I lettered and not include Jason's or somebody's, and like I said, professional suicide. So I was happy to buy a bunch of calendars and donate my services, but I couldn't do that, and right. I'm sure you understand how that is. Yeah, where a guy like maybe Mikey Janis can put a picture of his car on it, it's it's a different situation. But you got to tiptoe around that when you don't want to insult anybody. But yeah, top 10, I've got mine that I probably wouldn't share, but somebody who knows me probably knows some of them. I would have to say.
Could you say most fun?
Most fun? Ooh, well, it's all work until it's over, and then then a week later when you see it all finished, then it becomes there's been some fun stories involved in what we've done too. We were just reminiscing the other day, and I guess I can name names. This won't bother anybody. I was lettering a Corvette for Mike Swinarski, and this was the red one. I think it's the last one that John Soko Sr. painted, and he had purchased a rendering for me. Mike's been a wonderful friend for as long as I can remember, and a very loyal customer on top of that too. I can't tell you how many times I've lettered cars for him. And a super nice guy on top of that. And so anyways, this Corvette's in my shop, and this is before I had a lift, so it's up high on jack stands. I'm crawling around on my hands and knees, and Gary Moscato, Skinny, comes in my shop. And he's looking at, how's it going? Well, good. And he wanders around the car and, says his 2 cents, and he leaves. Didn't think anything of it. I never got up. I was still lettering the sides. Next day, Mike comes in to look at the car, and he walks around. Oh, it looks pretty good. Thanks, Mick. I'll be done. You can pick it up tomorrow. Walks around the back, and I had all the credits lettered on it, the thanks tos and whatever. And he goes, how come Skinny's name's on here? I said, I don't know. I got up, and I looked at the list. I had a yellow legal pad on the back with all the notes on it, and a pencil sitting there. When Gary was looking at the car, he wrote his name under the credits. I didn't know any different. I just lettered it on there. I said, I'll take that off, Mick. And so I said, no, leave it on. So, and I'm sure they both laugh about that. But now that's got to be 20 years ago. But that kind of stuff. I was embarrassed, but it wasn't out there. So but stuff like that's gone out, and Of course, the famous razor one.
Well,
I can't breath.
Yeah, well, I think the first time you lettered my car when my dad was still alive, where there was the on-off on the back, the master switch. I think you had like teal paint or something on one of your fingers, and as you set your hand up against the car to steady it to do the on-off, there was a little tiny dot of teal. He found it. And yes, my dad found that, and
of course he wouldn't take it off. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good Johnny Ofield stories, but we don't have the time, and this probably isn't the right place to tell them. But
I would say another one that Dan did that was very good. So when my dad switched from the automatic, I don't know if I told you this story or not. When my dad switched from the automatic to from the 5-speed to the the
I'm not the only guilty party here. That was a collaboration of the chassis builder and the sign shop at the time.
Took the car over to Jim Salemi's shop to basically have new cross member made and take the tunnel and change the tunnel from the 4-speed over to the Power Glide.
Yeah. And
when my dad went and picked the car up,
now you got to remember, my shop's on the other side of the wall.
Right. They were in Salemi's shop, and G-Force Race Cars and Dan the Sign Man are cohabit in the same building. So
and a drywall wall between
my dad picks the car up the tunnel where the 5-speed was sticking through before, is welded up like it should be. And now there's a picture of a shifter, a 4-speed shifter with a red circle and a slash through it painted on the tunnel. And I wasn't there when my dad picked it up, but supposedly he never said a word.
Didn't say a word to either of us.
He just picked it up and put it in the car. And
nothing was ever said, and that was worse than him yelling at us. You know that.
I still have the tunnel. At least that portion of the tunnel in my garage. I will.
But you could do that to Johnny Ofield.
Oh yeah.
And actually, he thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, you're darn right.
Yeah. He wouldn't let you know that. You suffered, trust me.
Yeah, he thought it was cool.
But I know enough about him that I could tell a lot of stories.
But you were talking a little bit about the styles and people learning it and knowing what it is and some of the retro paint schemes. Mm-hmm. The heavy use of the gold leaf, and you were talking about the different styles of it earlier. I mean, when you go see a car that's done by somebody that's a sign painter that's current day, I mean, are you looking at, if it's a restoration, are you looking at to see if the gold leaf pattern matched what the original one was?
No, gold leaf patterns don't match. Variegated gold, it's a crapshoot. You can't match variegated gold because that's exactly what. It's just a mismatch of psychedelic colors on gold leaf sheets. The only thing that you do have control over is on spun engine turn leaf is how big you make the swirls. Yeah. Okay, that you control. But no, that would almost be impossible. Yeah. That would. Yeah. I mean, I would have to say little to none would be perfect there. But using the right stuff would be. Yeah. There's different kinds of variegated gold. There's, green, red, black, what have you. So choosing that and then the proper outlining and shadowing. Right. So, again, some of those cars weren't lettered that well. Right. So the issue comes up that when you do a restoration, do you correct it? Okay. And just tighten it up? Or do you letter it, I won't use the word as poorly as it was lettered,
as accurately as it was.
I mean, that's an issue. You have to, and that's hard for a guy because you have that style of your.
I know this word was misspelled on the original, and I so want to correct the spelling.
You have to do that. Even on the Herald car, on the one side, the Quaker State logo is perfect, but the guy took the pattern and put it on the other side, and because it didn't fit the way the body was, tilted, he tilted it. And even in pictures, it looks crooked. I mean, major crooked. And when I had talked to Porterfield when he was at my shop, I said, "It's your call." I said, "But I would straighten this out." I said, "It'd be lettered the same, but just at least make it the placement of the angle, correct it." Because what's going to happen is you're going to have this thing at car shows, and you're going to cackle it, and somebody's going to say something to you. You want to answer that question 100 times why that's crooked on there? Or do you want people to just take pictures and go, wow, this thing's pretty neat? Right. and he agreed that it needed to be straightened out. I mean, is accurate. That's the only thing we changed.
That's one of the things that always gets me when I go to like the museums with the historic cars that are there. Somebody took the time to restore these cars, but then they didn't pay any attention to the contingency decals. And you see a contingency decal from 1993 on a car that was from 1987.
Yeah.
It's like that company wasn't even involved with the sport then, and it's just occupying space.
Yeah,
really, really frustrates me.
Yeah. They had a display of funny cars at India a year ago for the 50th anniversary, and there was only one or two that were, I would say, accurate. But again, that's me looking at them. The common person walking by them wouldn't pick up, and I don't want to use the word flaw because everything has flaws in it. But again, if you're gonna recreate something or it's the original, give it a yeoman's try, anyways. Right. Granted, I know they run out of money when it becomes time for paint and lettering, but unfortunately, but see, that's only my pet peeve. But that's the first thing people see. So
if you're gonna say it's a replica, make sure it's a replica.
Yeah, tribute car, same thing. I mean,
I was just going to say it's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking. Actually, was that's something that really kind of bugs me too is the tribute cars.
Yeah, and a lot of those
Rare Morrison.
Yeah,
I mean that's been done a bazillion times, right?
I mean, a lot of that stuff people don't realize that you need to have permission to do that stuff. I just can't go out there and build a Hemi Dodge Colt and put Sox and Martin down the side. I mean, guys were out there building cars that had blue Max on the side. And, that's
you can.
You can. It's correct. But that goes on in any business. Just like in ours, I'll get people that say, "Hey, can you paint me a Buffalo Bills banner?" I can't do it. Those are licensed by the NFL and the Bills. Whether it's in your basement or you're taking it to the game. Because I'm a professional.
Most of the
time, with liberties. You can't do that. As a professional shop, I can't do that. That's copyright infringement, and it's licensed, which is even worse.
What's the for conversation's sake, what's the difference between the Quaker State thing, like we were just talking about, putting it on a replica car or a tribute car, versus doing the Buffalo Bills?
Well, because that's what it's on. That car had been given permission to do that stuff, and that's a contingency sponsor.
Right.
It's part of the overall restoration of the vehicle. Although I will tell you, when one of the Blue Maxes was done that Ronnie Young had, I think they repopped one of the EXPs or one of those cars. They couldn't put, I want to say, Napa Regal Ride shocks or something on it.
Oh, really?
Because Napa's still in business, of course, and there was something with the licensing. So it looked like there was something missing, and I believe that's the logo that couldn't go on it. But for the same reason, just like these guys that popped one of Bernstein's and it says Budweiser King down the side. Well, that's twofold. That's Budweiser and that's Bernstein.
Right.
I remember when we did the Valvoline cars and I slid the word Valvoline into the V logo. They loved it, but it was a logistic nightmare because there were two registered trademark logos separately. So now they had to get the lawyers in on it. And that was Fletcher and Jay Payne and Bob Newberry and
that was when that was when the V was on the door and it just spelled Valvoline after it.
No, the Valvoline, like the E was into the first part of the V, or the V was into the first part of the V. And it really, if you separated them, it made the paint scheme look horrendous. Because I did them both ways just to see what it would look like, and they bought it, so it was pretty neat. And I still have all those renderings, and we had a good run with Valvoline when Gruber was there, and that too is thanks to Bob Newberry and Danny Fletcher. Those guys I knew up front, so it helped a little bit, but they called me, so it was a lot of fun. We did that for a long time, did a lot of those cars, so, and got drawers full of all that stuff.
Save it all.
Yeah, it is. That's my problem.
Yeah, you haven't been to Dan's shop, have you? Yeah, sometime.
Bring a lawn chair.
We'll be there. I'm telling you, we're going to be there a while.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, even if I'm not there. Just dig through stuff.
I mean, from my perspective, I just enjoy even looking through the old photo books that you have there, the cars that you've lettered, right? And it's fun to just sit there and look through the look through the photo books and, oh yeah, I remember this car, and geez, whatever happened to this guy? And
but then you start putting dates on that stuff, and you go, oh my God, that was 19 blah blah blah. And the cool part about that is, and not only that my work is there, but if some of the pictures were taken at the track, or even the guys picking up the car, who's with them or what's behind him.
Right.
It could be your dad when he was with us picking up the Corvette, and it's you and Lieber and McGowan standing behind him. Just the personalities, or if the picture was taken at the track, and not just stuff that we did, but anybody's car, and somebody posts it. You look in the background, and you may see my old Roadster sitting there, and Rick Froz and Jimmy Salemi, and you never know. It just goes to show you how long we've all been hanging around and doing this.
I would say there are plenty of bad things about Facebook.
Right.
One of the really great things about Facebook is all of that content that is shown up in a centralized location and being shared.
Rob Potter's got a morgue of photos that is just incredible.
Did you say a morgue? Morgue,
yeah. That's what it's called. I got a morgue of stuff too, that's your life. That's everybody's life. I mean, Rob Potter took pictures of everything,
right?
Everything and anything. And I mean, there's he had some beautiful pictures of my car, and he understood pictures from starting lines and coming through the lights, and his memory, some similar to mine, a wealth of useless information that we can tell you who's in that picture and who's in the other lane or what year it was. It's just because it interests us. It meant something to us.
Right.
And it still does. So, it's kind of neat to have that. So,
yeah, we had...
I'm lucky I have that. I enjoy that. I share a lot of that with Sean Beatty, of course. That's a guy you got to get on the show.
Sean, I just noticed he threw a like on the show.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Hello, Sean.
He does every he does every show. I will say he watches every show, and I've invited him on.
Yeah, he's an enjoyable person. I'd love to be on here with him. Yeah.
We can arrange that.
You need a 3-hour podcast.
That's fine. We can coordinate it.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I enjoy his company when he comes by the shop. So,
we had Rob on the show.
Rob Potter?
Yeah. Was it couple? I don't know. Summertime maybe we had him on.
It was right about the same time they were coming out with episode somewhere between 3 and 5 of the memories stuff that he was doing on that pay for access site.
Right. Yep.
The drag strip memories, and we talked a lot about the Canadian memories and how that whole thing started.
Worst thing they ever did at Cayuga was burn that tower down.
Don't start. That is a really sore subject, Dan. Yeah, it was
not a lot of things that make me mad, but that bothers me. That was iconic, and I mean, I just poke fun at it. I mean, it's up to the track what they do, but every picture of anything that had any significance, that tower was in the background then, and everybody will tell you that. And then the sad part is they should have just rebuilt a new one that looked like it in the same spot, and they didn't. They moved it to the other side of the track. Now when they take pictures, there's windmills in the back. So that was iconic. I mean, it was like being at Orange County. You knew where you were. They tore that tower down like at Indy in the old days before they put up the new tower. And I think that was '84, and you could tell where you were. Just the shadows or whatever, and they had a coordinated sign plan there. Woody and the guys, Norm Noodle told me that it had specifics on how those signs were down the guardrails and all that, and that's what made that place look as nice as it did. There was no, a banner screwed to this, and an aluminum sign screwed over here, and somebody put a plywood something over this. It was all coordinated, just like you see in plazas. They had specs for all that, and that's why that place always looked as good and clean as it did. And they ran it like a business. You go to a lot of tracks, and there's no rhyme or reason to a lot of things they do. And dirty starting lines where there's tow trucks sitting where they shouldn't be, and it hiding behind the tower, they can still get out fast enough, and that just you need to clean up some of that, not only just for the pictures, but it makes for a nicer view from the grandstands.
Right.
And again, I'm not pointing to any tracks. I'm just saying in general, get that stuff off the starting line, hide it somewhere, but put some effort into making your place look nice. That's all. But the coordinate sign plan and the tower and everything at Cayuga was iconic. It was just, especially, Woody. Unfortunately, Woody's not in good health. I don't believe he's passed, but they ran a sign shop that was second to none for that kind of work. I mean, they littered a lot of hot rods too, but they did most of the signs up there with Tramp Warner and those guys, and they were perfect. They were just great. It was part of the scenery. That's why I enjoyed it so much.
I would say, it was really an iconic track
to begin with.
Yeah, to begin with. I mean, historically, it's.
Yep.
I mean, we raced there a few years ago, and it was fun going there and making passes down the track. Now, I can't remember the name. Race Cayuga, I believe, is the name of the series that they have now.
Right.
I don't know. I haven't really heard.
Is that De Silva's deal? Is that him? No, maybe not.
No. Yeah. Trying to think of the guy's name. I'm terrible with names, but I haven't heard what their plans are for 2018. I think Rob is involved with the banquet for them.
Could be.
But I'm hopeful that the Dragway Memories videos will start back up again.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed those. For anybody that's watching, if you haven't seen or gone to the Dragway Memories Facebook page, I certainly encourage you to do so if you really like nostalgia drag racing. It's there's a lot of really cool videos that Rob has, and so yeah, I'm hoping those get started back up again.
Yep.
Was it Monday or Tuesday? I forget that he posted those, but it always made my morning. First thing, go and watch a quick 5-6 minute video and get my day started off.
There's some great stuff. There's some great stuff out there. People still having shoe boxes that needs to come out and get posted. I'm guilty of that too. I'd love to sit down and scan all that stuff in. And for a while there, I was. On Facebook, it's a great tool for us, business-wise. I was posting, old drawings that I did back in the 80s and 90s, and I got a great response from it because, it just brought back memories to a lot of the local guys. And, of course, a lot of the stuff I did nationally that, people never knew that came out of the shop we posted. And, again, it worked both ways. It worked for entertainment reasons, and it worked for business reasons. But I enjoyed doing it and got great feedback on it. Keep posting where you got this stuff hid. And if I've got it, there's a million other guys that have it. So it's pretty neat. So, and I didn't own a camera until I graduated from high school. Think all the stuff I missed.
Sure.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Luckily, I remember it, which is great. But, we didn't have the money to own a camera. So I didn't take any pictures till 1975.
Well, say video's even more rare, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the number of people that were out at the track.
8mm stuff.
Yeah.
They're still looking for that for the Sunday Niagara reunions. Niagara's been closed since 1974, so it's been pretty neat. And people still are dragging that stuff out. They still have it, no pun intended, of course. But there's another track. Boy, wouldn't you love to have that place back? What a great location, huh?
It was a great location for sure. I'm pretty sure that ship has sailed forever.
You're never going to see that there. Dean Johnson told me he stops by the shop quite frequently. He's still got a hangar full of cool stuff. He told me if that place went one more year, he probably would have committed suicide. So, but that's a promoter and a business operator. That was still, I don't want to say a new sport, but, it was still a new sport back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. It closed in 74.
74, yeah.
And what would you say, not the very first NHRA race, but real organized drag racing was probably in the early 60s for the most part?
Yeah.
You're really talking about something that was only 15.
The U.S. Nationals is your oldest one, and that's, 60... Oh, God, I should know this. 67 years? 63 years. Oh, he's looking it up. Yeah.
This one I can.
I failed. I'm sorry, fans. I failed on the date.
You are not the encyclopedia of drag racing that we thought you were.
I'm in tears. Been there 43 times, though.
You've kept track?
Straight. I've been there 43 times in a row.
Oh, 43 times in a row.
43 years I've been there. Since 1975.
61.
There you go. No, that's from Indy.
That is...
Or was that Oklahoma?
Kansas.
Great Bend Municipal
Bend,
Airport
there you go.
in Kansas in 55.
Yeah,
Oklahoma City for the 4th. in 58. It was in Detroit
Yep.
in 59 to 60, and then Indy at 61.
Detroit,
Yeah, but-
really? I didn't realize it was in Detroit.
Well, everyone knows that,
yeah.
Jason.
God, please.
I knew it was in the Midwest, but I didn't realize it
I
was
thought
in
you were an
Detroit.
encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 55, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
55 years at
No,
Indy?
no.
Oh.
55.
It started
is
in
the first
1955. It
Oh,
was
okay.
it was in
Okay.
Indianapolis.
Right.
I don't know.
I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha.
I'll draw you a
Chrisman
map
won
after
that.
the show.
Okay.
I will tell you our Chrisman won that. He's looking that up now. So.
What year did you say?
55?
Oh, they didn't
Oh,
go
they
back
don't.
finishes
Okay,
that
well, you
far.
know what?
They couldn't find
The
those.
final and top
They
fuel.
never unearthed
the
the
final and top
Rosetta.
fuel in 75, Garlich Butte, Shirley. So there you go. Beetle beat Prudhomme. That
And what
it.
was it 78 that McEwen beat
Prudhomme? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It was.
Yeah. It is. They haven't. They didn't go back to the original
That's what you got me
iterations.
for.
The results went back as far as 61 on that page.
Yeah.
I say we haven't had them on the show, but it's actually pretty cool. I was stumbled across today the Red Line Shirt Club.
Mm-hmm.
They have, if you were to join the shirt club in the next 3 days, I'm sure it's some type of Christmas thing.
Yep.
They have a 3-foot by 18-inch banner that is McEwen Racing Prudhomme. And supposedly the banner is right from McEwen's archive. Now, I don't know if he had like 1,000 banners or if they just got the artwork and just reprinted them. But
they're probably not new, but yeah, the artwork,
but
is
it's
probably
a
original.
cool photograph of the two of them sitting on the starting line, and it's hard for me to justify spending $25 a month on a T-shirt just for myself when I have
Why?
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 Oh, just because I have like 50 T-shirts sitting
50?
at home. But
You're weak, brother.
yes, but
I got 50 in and out T-shirts.
I was just saying,
Thanks,
just the
Sean.
banner alone, it was almost enough to get me to click on the subscribe button.
Try buying model cars, pal.
Oh yeah, man, I don't want to go there. I get enough hobbies. Chris is trying to get me to
My
race
life
my
is a
RC
hobby.
car.
What would you say?
My life is a hobby.
Yeah, we're going to Pennsylvania on Sunday. We're gonna go race RC cars.
Cool. Yeah, that's something
I can't wait.
just can't do. Or I'd be looking
You should knock it before you try it.
No. I mean, I got too much going on.
I
got 500 model cars I need to build first.
You got what?
500 unbuilt model cars I need to build first.
I don't remember if I asked you this before.
Yeah.
We talked about how you got that. You bought a collection a couple years ago.
I bought a couple. Yeah.
And these are sealed kits, correct?
Some are sealed. Some. I see that's a big myth about model cars.
Okay, because I have at least two follow-up questions.
Yep. A collector doesn't care if the seal has been broken on the model.
Okay.
Okay, because then you know the contents. The seal, what actually does over time, shrinks the box.
Yeah, it'll warp the box.
Right.
Sure.
So a collector doesn't care if it's sealed. Everybody thinks it's worth more if it's sealed. But unfortunately, in today's day and age, people can reseal them with product that's out there.
So I mean, if you get a kit that's open, you want everything in the bags inside still. Does that make you feel more comfortable?
It does, but if you've been doing it long enough, you know what's in there.
Right.
By looking at it, you can tell if stuff's been broken off the trees. It's the box art and the model that are the valuable. Now, built, they mean nothing.
Right.
The decals, of course, after 40 years of sitting in somebody's basement, are probably hammered, but it's still the box art. Dickie Harrell's 69 Camaro. I've got one. It's all complete. It's open, but it's all there. It's worth $300 to $400.
Right. Now, if you get a rare kit that's sealed, that you decide you want to build, are you going to break the seal on this thing, open it up, and build it, or are you going to try and find an open one?
It's twofold. If you find one that's open, it's great. But again, if you're going to build it, you're going to build it. Models were meant to be built. Unfortunately, I have a lot of them that I haven't gotten to yet. And there's a lot of guys that have way more than I do,
Right.
Again, at my age, 60, the subject matter that I have with the model cars, in another couple of years, the next generation doesn't care about them. They don't care that it's Connie Coletta's Mustang from 1970 or, the Motown Missile from the 72, the original model. It's a 72 Cuda to them. so the value's not there. It's just like in the real world, a guy like myself, growing up, God, I would have loved to have had, a Hemi Roadrunner. Well, now I could afford to buy one. That's what I'm going to buy. I'm not going to buy a 57 Chevy or a 32 Packard. That was the generation before me and the one before them.
Right.
And, the next ones, well, they'll just buy all race burners. So, because after that there wasn't anything, but the muscle car eras, guys my age, mid 50s to mid 60s.
Why does nobody want to give any respect to the 1981 Daytona Charger? I mean, seriously.
They still made them. It had to be a repop of some little Horizon or something like that. There you go.
Mitsubishi.
Had a Wankel engine in it or something.
Yeah, they made a.
Do not waste any more of our time on that.
They did a Colt too. They did a Colt.
It was a. I believe it was
the only thing cooler than a Colt Pro Stocker with a Hemi, and it was Frank Mazey's Opel. That.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
There was Plymouth had a Lancer, and then it was a Mitsubishi before that.
Yeah.
Was that like a K car?
I'm sorry. It was a Mitsubishi. It was the Arrow, right? Mitsubishi Arrow. We had this conversation at one point.
Well, the Arrow was a Plymouth that made Pro Stockers out of them. That's
maybe we got it flip flop. We had that. The guy that lives locally. It was the green one. We had a picture
Eric.
of it. Yeah, Eric.
Eric Macarola, yeah.
Oh, is it? Yeah, the race car.
Yeah,
the Plymouth Arrow.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the one show we sat here, and we were like, "What kind of car is that?" And we literally just both of us had a mental block. We could not come up with that for some reason.
God, the funny car bodies they made with that on it.
Yeah.
Prudhomme, Beetle, Bernstein, Little John Lombardo. Should I go on?
Sure, there weren't. Well, I mean,
Plymouth Arrows.
Well, yeah. No, I was thinking Pro Stockers. Then I mean, I know Hagen. I know Hagen.
Leo had one. Leo, and then they all ran like B gas and that because
right.
Yeah. So, but that was late 70s, mid to late 70s.
Yeah, I was trying to think. There was
John Hagen had one.
I thought there was somebody else that had. Fairly prominent person that ran.
Dick Landy had. Well, it was a Horizon, but Dick Landy had one.
Glynn.
No. Oh yes, one. Yeah.
Yeah. Glynn ran an Arrow.
Of course
too.
he did.
Yeah.
It's the Monza that failed.
I knew there was somebody that was missing. But yeah. Now we can think of it
for another day.
Yep. So. The viewers just dropped to like 3.
Oh,
of course they did. Chrysler fans are off this. We'll get you back. So,
next episode.
Yep. Next episode, 2 weeks. Put a date on it. Where is it? Be the 14th of December. The day after the last tour race.
Wow.
And then, so that means I'm actually off. So are we going to do 1 week of Christmas then too? I'm off that week.
Let's see. Yeah, we could probably do that on the 28th.
Roast up some guests.
Yeah.
So we do the 14th and 28th in December. Yeah, we could do that. We could pull that off. That ended that last week of December gets very, very stressful because we're gearing up for the New Year's Eve party, and usually that week they're asking me
I'm asleep by 8 on New Year's
for 5. We have the big party at the Holiday Inn, and they're usually asking me how many people are actually coming, how many rooms and all the logistics, and all of that leads to the final question: is how are you going to pay for it? So it gets a little intense. We got to make sure the cars are going to be built. We got to make sure the cars are here that we're giving away and stuff like that. It gets heavy.
No.
Oh.
Demolition Derby cars.
Oh, Demolition Derby. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, they could be road cars, but usually they don't have paperwork, and they've already had the catalytic converters cut out of them. But we'll give away 4 cars that night.
No kidding.
Yeah. Oh, we got a 1975 Cadillac Fleetwood.
Plymouth Arrow.
No. 75 Cadillac Fleetwood.
Oh, my God. It's bigger than my truck.
1985 Crown Victoria. Camry and a newer Tahoe. We'll give all those away.
Good for you. Yeah.
Sometimes. This audience probably isn't as worried about it as I am.
No, the drag racing audience is a little different.
Well, we won't worry about.
No, they're welcome to come and hang out. It'll be the greatest time they never remember,
or forgotten.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just worry about the next show, which will be the 14th. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So we'll worry about that show for now.
Yep.
And if we think we can do one the 28th, we'll
We can
do
do
one
it.
the 28th too.
We can do it. It might just be a shorter episode. Come in, we'll talk for 10 minutes, and it's like, I
I
gotta
gotta
go.
go.
Yeah.
We've covered all our bases for this one.
I think so. I'm going to start working on guests for the next show right away.
Sounds good to
I
me.
procrastinate too often.
You've always got tomorrow to procrastinate.
I know.
I
That's the
do it
problem.
today.
And that's
We
the
can put it
problem.
off till tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, it's always great to see you.
Thanks.
Glad you
Thanks
came
for
in.
having me come back. Yeah.
Always welcome. Open door.
Well, thank you very much. I hope the show's very entertaining.
We got to get Sean in with you.
Oh my God!
We got to make that happen.
Yeah, we'll talk him in too because we'll get going.
Are you Facebook friends with Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was until tonight.
I say, because he posts some pretty interesting stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that
There's some needs to
he'd be an entertaining guest for sure.
Yeah.
He was last year's track champion and top eliminator at Lancaster. And here's a guy who, and I'm not just singling him out, so please, audience, forgive me, but getting back to being honored, here's a guy who's been there day in, day out, along with Roger Kiefer and Wayne Cleveland, that whole gang. Paul Cochi, Jimmy Fix, and all those guys. Now,
Joe Karasik.
Yeah, I mean, that's old school. And what the heck is that flying around? You see that?
No.
On the monitor? Look on the monitor.
Oh, we got
Sorry, guys, there's something flying around here.
Oh.
But anyways, long and short of it is, here's a guy who, like I said, it's tough enough to win on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. This guy won the championship for the first time, I believe, last year. By all rates, it's an accomplishment that anybody who does that needs to be recognized, and he's a fine champion. I mean, he's along with those other guys I mentioned. Wayne Cleveland was a champion, I think, in 11, if I'm not mistaken. Roger's been out there since day one. So I mean, you go back to these tracks, even up to Cayuga, that in my era, it's the same guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's really neat, and we need to keep that alive. We need to pass on the history. I know it sounds kind of pathetic about local drag racing, that people need to know it, but if we don't, then it's just lost. I mean, guys like Johnny Oldfield, Jason's dad. My God, here the man's been gone all these years, and we still laugh and tell stories about him. That's how iconic it was. Jimmy Zaki is still out there racing. It needs to be shared. Just like with Rob Potter, the stuff he has. It's priceless because it makes me remember. Rob and I are probably around the same age, and probably it's just great reference material, and the stuff that went on at Cayuga is epic. It was just fantastic. The points races they had there, you couldn't find a spot to stand. That was NHRA's best points races, and it was even out of the country, for heaven's sakes. So
yeah, I mean, and we do bemoan the fact. To a certain extent, I mean, you kind of hinted at it about like the model car thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the next generation's not going to be interested in your model cars.
Yeah.
And we kind of bemoan the fact that, overall, I mean, people are going to be, the kids, the next generation are not going to be really interested in Corvettes or darts and stuff like that. But we are still blessed that there are a bunch of young kids out there that I'll call them young kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tim and Thomas Fletcher, the
you
John
just
Stewart
took the words
Jr.,
right
Ronnie
out of my mouth.
Kesmer,
Yeah,
Ray Thurston. I mean, guys like that I think of right off the top of my head that are really passionate and interested about this, and are really interested about what's happened in the past, because these kids were young enough to remember some of this stuff.
That's right.
Back when they were little.
If we have the time, I'll tell you a quick funny story. Thomas had his Roadster at my shop during the winter. He had bought from Doug Linden.
Yep.
And we were changing it over. He kept the colors on it, the grays and stuff. We were changing it over to Peak, put his name on it and that. Danny was out of town, so it was the back and forth on the phones and what have you. So we had to put the Mickey Thompson logos and that on it. And how old's Thomas? 28, maybe 29. So, anyways, he's at my shop and we're looking at some stuff. And I showed him a picture of Dale Pauly driving Mickey Thompson's Pinto. Well, first off, Thomas never realized that there was a drag strip in Niagara Falls, which he wouldn't have. It's been closed for 43 years.
20 years before he was
Of
born.
course, I think everybody remembers that.
Right.
So I'm like, what, you didn't? And then I'm showing him a picture of Mickey Thompson's Pinot that says Mickey Thompson down the side. He's sponsored by, through Danny, sponsored by him. And he's looking at me. I'm getting no reaction from him. Like, yeah. I said, well, you do know Mickey Thompson was a person, right? And he kind of gave me that deer in the headlight look. And I'm thinking to myself, he probably doesn't. Maybe he did, but,
I'm thinking Mickey Thompson was murdered probably
82 or 4, maybe, somewhere in there.
I would have said 90, but it was probably not long after Thomas was born.
But my point was that probably anybody under 35 didn't realize Mickey Thompson was a person because of the company. Mm-hmm. And, here I just assumed that. And I'm talking to Danny on the phone, and I told him that story. And he goes, dude, think about it. Anybody under 35 probably never realized that. And here you just assume that these companies and, the younger generation would understand that. And here's a sponsor on his car, and no disrespect for them. He didn't know that. And here, Paulie's been driving a funny car since he's been 15, 16 years old, and Mickey down the side of the car. So just a little pundit. But, yeah, that's why we need to keep it alive. And, Danny's a great teacher to his sons and his daughter. And, like you said, Sierra and everyone else. And those guys will keep that all alive. And then that generation as well. I don't think you'll see those two kids out there, driving rice burners. At the track, but I could be wrong. But I really think it'll be a '69 Camaro till the year 2050.
Right,
right. But it is interesting, and again, you need to keep that alive. The nostalgia cars, that's our history. That's a sport history. Mm-hmm. The funny cars, front engine, top fuel cars. It's all this resurgence in that. It's good. It's no different than going to a history museum or a science museum, just looking at all the stuff that is archived, right. Or coming to my shop,
right?
Self plug.
So to close the history lesson, Mickey Thompson was killed March 16th, 1988.
Oh, yeah, later than I thought. But yeah, he and his wife. Trudy.
That's right. His wife was killed. Did you know that? Did you know that story?
We've talked about it a couple times. Yeah.
It's still tragic. I think they indicted his partner at the time when they had the indoor or the arena racing, with the trucks and that. So,
is that what they thought it was? I mean, I know that they never convicted anybody, but I didn't realize that that's what they.
I believe he's been convicted, but I.
Oh no! It's unsolved.
It's still unsolved. Yeah. It's too bad.
Crazy when you think about it. Two guys right up on bicycles, and
yet they can tell who blew up an aircraft by finding,
right.
The black box.
Yeah, well, not even a black box. It was sliver of somebody's something or other, or the VIN number off a Ryder truck. So,
right. Right.
So, which are both very sad, of course, but. Yeah.
I never really thought about it until I came up in conversation here, but I would have to assume that one of the reasons why Mickey Thompson probably, from a branding standpoint, went to the M/T is just because of the fact that in today's market, right, the name Mickey Thompson really doesn't have any real value like it did 40 years ago.
Well, true, but still, from a marketing aspect, a logo should be looked at and sight read.
Mm-hmm. And that's 7 to 9 characters.
There you go. It's just like you got a little 3-year-old kid who doesn't read, drives by McDonald's. He certainly knows it's that, and that's because of them golden arches. Mm-hmm. It's drilled into their head.
I wonder what that says about the Western New York Super Association.
You don't like the logo I designed you?
No, I like the logo. It's just the world's longest name for a racing association.
Yeah, they're verbose, but it's cool. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, there's no acronym there, right? Is that what that's called?
WNYSRA.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. It's a household name.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's going to be. We're taking it national this year.
You got to have a banquet if you do that.
Yeah. Wow.
Whoa.
We'll work on that.
Again,
I forgot he drove. I have to be careful.
Didn't take long.
Yeah.
What do you think? Episode number 27. Appreciate everybody that was tuning in and hanging out with us again, Dan. So glad that you came. It's always good to see you. A lot of topics to bounce around on. A little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a look back, a little bit of models, a little bit of paint, you name it. We had a little bit of everything in this one. That's going to do it for us. here from the North Park building at Academy Square here in downtown Seneca Falls, the home of Finger Lakes 1. We're going to be back here again on the 14th of December. Can't wait to see you then.